Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, the reason Keep It Real exists, one of the mentors and the first person who took me under his wing back in Singapore and explained me the whole world of misinformation, fact checking, disinformation is right here. So, Guruji, welcome.
Did you hear my explanation? Satji, not explanation, sorry, exclamation. I was like, huh? But yeah. But I like to bato gyan, so that's fine, man. If people listen to the gyan that I bato, you know how it is, right? People are like, uh, the funny thing is, some people are eternally in search of an audience, and sometimes some people get lucky enough for other people to listen to what they have to say. That's all.
Oh, but that's really kind of you, especially because of the knowledge you have in the field, and thanks for always sharing it. And I'm sure there are many other folks who want to contribute and need mentors and guides like you. So speaking of audience, before you entered into the misinformation space, you were actually a journalist, right? And before that, so I had some line of questions that I'm going off script right in the beginning. Just want to know, how did the whole journey into journalism begin? What were your starting days of inspiration and spark which you got you started?
Oh, well, I first thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And yeah, I represent Boom, of course, but I started, of course, as a journalist, and that's because my mother. I think my mother told me that journalism is a noble profession, social service, and all of that. So I literally, and then I wasn't very much into engineering, medicine, and so I also had a mentor. It's important to have mentors, as you said. I've had many mentors, right? So I had an elder, brother-like figure, not actually my brother, but he was one of my best friends. Actually, quite a famous guy. His name is Bruce Lee Money. He runs this. He's the front man, the lead guitarist, and the singer of rock band in Bangalore called Thermal and a Quarter. So whatever he did, I would do. Like he would do karate, I would do karate. He would go swimming, I'd go swimming. Like he was 1.5 years or about a little more than a year ahead of me, and so I looked up to him. And one day he was like, "When I grow up, मैं National Geographic reporter बनूंगा." ठीक है? He didn't say it in Hindi because those days we were not very familiar with Hindi, right? We were growing up in Bangalore. So I was like, yeah, I'll also be a National Geographic reporter. So that's where it started. And yeah, I've been a TV journalist. I was numbed by TV news. And so I left in 2014. I did a lot of digital, journalism in digital spaces. And here I am.
Wonderful. So in that journey from when your elder brother friend decided National Geographic till I think when was the first time you actually came across misinformation and fake news, whichever form it was? Do you remember that you were like, oh, okay, this also happened? Because I think journalism and fact checking was synonymous till the early 90s, if not the early 2000s. I mean, journalism meant that you had to fact check things. So there must have been a turn in the industry and your profession somewhere.
I would say the turn came pretty recently, to be honest. I mean, there's always been bad journalism. There's always been good journalism. Or at least if you look back about 30, 40 years, you can find bad and good journalism. You'll find excellent journalism in the United Kingdom, right? The Times newspaper, the Telegraph newspaper, the Guardian newspaper, and you'll have the worst journalism in the United Kingdom as well. The tabloids. They're the guys who led the world in tapping other people's phones and making stuff up, and whatever you could think of, they've done. Okay, so. And I would say even at one point, even at their worst, the worst of Indian media was not as bad as the worst of UK media, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? But the media in India wouldn't do things like tap people's phones and stuff. At least then, like pre the dawn of social media, I would say. But once it became pretty clear that social media, WhatsApp, having a smartphone in every hand, having pretty not very expensive internet, all of this, if you combine all of this, it becomes like a Brahmastra. So once you have a Brahmastra in hand, you are going to use it. It's not like you're not going to use it. It's not like मैं यहाँ side पे रखूंगा जब जरूरत पड़ेगा मैं use करूंगा. No, you're going to use it. So I think around the world we saw a lot of people amplify their messages using these platforms and social media, smartphones, messaging apps, cheap internet, all of that. And people who had power, like when I say power, I mean money power or movement power, and money or political power. So you have money power is when a person has lots of paisa, and political power is when you have like a strong political party or a strong political system that can leverage these messaging, the four factors I mentioned. And then you have movement power also. Movement power is when you have social movements. So I think in the last 15 years, we've seen all three in India. And so it's not a coincidence that the rest of the world woke up to the idea of fake news and misinformation at the same time as everyone else. That's because everyone realized, hey, the days of the great internet where everyone can connect to everybody and we're all a big, happy global family is over. And now we have everybody can connect to everybody. And therefore, you have the worst of the worst messages coming out and getting platformed. We are in that internet now. So that kind of thing dawned in 2016. And that was like, so I would really say mass media was heading towards publishing a lot of rubbish, I would say, but the turn came because of these factors, and also independent media operates on the internet, and so you can do a great job on the internet, or you can use the internet to do a really rotten job. So that's like really how I would see things.
So 2016 is the year you mentioned over there, and now we jump 8 years forward, 2024, 70 nations going to elections, and Gen AI has arrived at its, normal users are using it for fun, for malicious content. What are your general views in this January? Seeing this is a year of election for even countries like India and the United States. As somebody who's working so close of tackling misinformation, how do you approach this year, or your team? How do you plan to approach it?
So it's an interesting question. I think the experience of generative AI and generative AI fueled misinformation, disinformation, and deep fakes and stuff like that. So that's slightly deep fakes is different from generative AI, of course, but these are all problems that are going to affect different countries differently, where the scale is different. And I think it's the other way around, it's the state of the existing discourse in a country that will kind of influence whether a particular kind of generative AI or deep fake, or for example, will affect elections. I'll give you an example. Um, when you see at large country levels, um, what do people use misinformation for? Why do they use quote unquote fake news? It's because they want people to believe a certain thing, right? So they want to achieve something. They want to achieve a change in attitude towards something that can be harnessed for votes. An attitude change leads to a behavioral change. So that's the maksad of any kind of manipulated information, right? Now, in order to kind of put that information out, you need some conditions in place. You need the quality of the message is not so important as quantity. So you need to be able to reinforce the same wrong, harmful message multiple times. And when I say quantity, I don't just mean like large quantity. I mean like insane levels of quantity, right? So you're getting attacked, literally attacked is the word for it, by people sending a particular kind of narrative through thousands and thousands of different types of messages, which on their own they are like, they're on their own, you'll be like, acha theek hai, but they actually match up with all the other messages and they kind of create a narrative. So you need to seed the narrative, and once you seed the narrative, then every time you send a single message, that narrative gets activated in the person's mind only, right? Like if you want to seed the narrative that a particular kind of medical intervention is flawed, or a particular political ideology is flawed, or a particular community is a villain or a bad community, then you can use thousands of messages to seed that idea. But once that idea, rightly or wrongly, has been accepted by people, you don't need to do much. You don't need deepfakes. You don't need generative AI. One badly crafted WhatsApp message with spelling mistakes and poor Photoshop is enough to do the job. You know what I mean? Because you've already seeded the narrative. You're just activating that narrative. So from that perspective, I don't see, yeah, what's the difference between Photoshop and Gen AI, fueled messaging, or deep fakes or shallow fakes? No difference, right? As long as the message is the same and the entire population has been kind of radicalized to a particular kind of message. So I would say India may, politically speaking, we're in the era of nationalism. We are in the era of um, Hindu dharma is at the forefront and all of that, right? So that kind of narrative is now default. Just a single message is enough to activate it. But maybe in other countries, we have not had that kind of situation. And maybe they are ripe for someone to come and seed a particular kind of narrative. Maybe in that situation, you have, deep fakes might work. But here in India, we have got everything already we needed. Deepfakes are just one extra. You know what I mean? Sorry, a long answer, but
No, but I think you really explained how it works and why. I just did a interview with Katie Herbert, and she has this page called "Panic Responsibly." So we don't need to panic too much about Gen AI and deepfakes coming in, as the emotional bias kind of makes up for the bad quality of the information, if we had to put it like that. All right, so looking, I mean, the magnitude of the problem is understood. Some of the solutions that have been recently spoken about, and countries, including India, are trying to bring around regulation to curb misinformation. Regulation existed earlier as well, but now it is kind of getting more and more specific. Some of the journalists even kind of coined the ministry as Ministry of Truth, and laws are being made around it. Another methodology is fact checking. So, what are your views on? Let's stick to the first question. That what do you think about regulation around misinformation, and where do you see it going? And is it really impactful to curb this menace?
okay, that's a good question. But again, I like really simple answers, but unfortunately, simple answers don't hold a lot of nuance. So lawmaking is like, yeah, it works from incrementally. Okay, you get it right one sometimes, you don't get it right, then you've got to change it, and then you got to make a good faith attempt in the beginning, to create a law that will satisfy the challenges of the current times, but also will not be misused in the future. So it's a balancing act. It's a very tricky act. So it depends on who you talk to, right? Is India doing a good job or not? um, Obviously, from a freedom of expression perspective, yes, things are not great. But that's not all there is to look at. Yes, governments around the world have realized that we do need some kind of regulation. What is the regulation is the question, right? The United States, the default so far has been, freedom of expression is paramount. Social platforms don't have they're not liable legally for the stuff that's carried on their platforms. That's how these platforms have become really big, right? Let's say now increasingly the default in Europe is different. It's like, hey, privacy is paramount, not freedom of expression. And so a lot of the lawmaking here in Europe, I would say, GDPR, etc., that would be like focusing on privacy first. These are all very lazy ways of kind of describing it. Privacy first versus what's the word for it? Freedom of expression and business first in the United States. And in India, well, there are people who are arguing for a third way, where you embed privacy in the code itself. So these are all people like Rahul Mathan, who is techno-legal kind of expert, a lawyer who specializes in emerging technologies. He has written a book called The Third Way, and it's written in the about Aadhaar and digital public infrastructures and stuff like that from that perspective. And so there he talks about a third way. Okay. I would say in India, the government and the two ministers in question, I think Ashwini Vaishnav and Rajiv Chandrasekhar, they've started the ball rolling. Are they doing a good job? I'm not in a position to kind of comment on it because I haven't really worked out what they're doing because, my focus is elsewhere. So I'll park that for now. But I will say that it's a challenge. It's a real challenge, getting the lawmaking right. And I would say that a journalist like me, my responsibility would be to ensure that, or rather to kind of track that, it's being done well, but at the same time, intentions and the work is not hijacked by outside forces who do not understand that making laws is kind of complicated and it's not easy. So I would say my position is nuanced on this as well. I don't know if this answered your question, but that's the answer I have.
Oh, definitely. It gave me a picture, and I think when it comes to these big questions, nuance is the way forward. You mentioned platforms, these very big platforms or mega platforms. They dominate a lot of information dissemination, and the survey we did, Keep It Real, it pretty clearly showed that about 80 to 90% of the information being received by the first time voters we surveyed across the country are primarily coming from two companies. And on the other side, we also see that engagement is monetization. It's not the quality of content which matters. There have also been criticisms like Cambridge Analytica. There are cases across the globe. Uh, Somebody who serves on the safety advisory board of many of these companies, I do know content moderation is superbly complex, and it kind of plays into the same way as almost lawmaking, freedom of expression versus the quality of content. So, if you were asked this question by one of the CEOs of Meta and Google, what would be your advice to them on how to tackle misinformation on their various platforms?
Man, that's like a tough question. Okay. So what I would tell them in private is completely different from what I would say in public. Okay. Let me say that first. Uh, Hey, just interestingly, right? I just read the other day, yesterday, I read that some of these guys, these really rich billionaires, they really talk about the future in terms of optimism. They're techno optimists, right? They're like, the world is going to be a better place, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, apparently, they've invested in these shelters, these doomsday shelters. Jab, everyone in the world is a zombie, right? They will all go underground and they will live there. They're purchasing not just little underground bunkers, but little islands and stuff like that. So it's kind of funny. Um, Sorry, I think I had some
So,
electronic.
so much for their optimism over there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That my
So
future is
yeah,
secure.
what will I say? मेरा औकात क्या है? What will I say to these guys? But at the same time, I think there are these organizations that are keeping them. not keeping them, what's the word for it, are arguing for accountability, increased accountability. And I believe that they're doing a good job. I think these big companies are also like, it's not like they are ignoring the issue. So they're looking at it as well, and they're throwing their dollars at it, and their technical might at it. But is it their number one priority? No, that is where the big question is.
But my chain of thought was that any other business, if it was actually messing around with national issues, and that be it United States, UK, and specifically India, they would have been taken to task, right? I mean,
Yes.
Cambridge Analytica in any other situation would not be acceptable. I mean, what I don't understand, and why, with the elections coming up, that there is a lot of support towards fact checking, which is, a very important and powerful tool towards misinformation. But what we have seen over the years, and research shows it, that fact check news travels way little than the disinformation or misinformation it was trying to uh, tackle. So, how do you, like, when it comes to the solution part, 2024 elections, from the election commission to MeToo to many of the various political leaders, they are like, okay, what is the black and white solution? What are the 10 steps to be taken? Like, where do we go from here? It's pretty much what everybody's asking. And everybody's pretty much on the same boat when it comes to the solution part. Because regardless of the business, I really don't think even the big tech knows how to solve this. So where do we go for the next 4 or 5 months at an action level to tackle this?
Next 4 5 months. Next 4 5 months, we will continue to remain where we are. I would say there is no action plan in the next 4 5 months. There might not even be an action plan in the next 4 5 years. Who knows? No, I mean, that's me being extra cynical. Let me rephrase. I would say yes. You know what's going to happen? Technology changes so rapidly. There are people who say that technology is going to be the ultimate solution. So, okay, technology created the problem, technology will be the solution. I mean, now it's 2024, and we are on our mobile phones, right? Smartphones pretty much all the time. I mean, 5 years later, even we may not even be using the phones. Might be playing around with some other technology. Things change so fast, right? It might just be like incremental change at first, but it'll be so. I really don't know if we're able to catch up with technology, the speed of technology, and there's nobody around to really say, hey, you know what, these are the limits of technology. Gen AI is here already. It has changed so many things. We don't know how it's going to change any professions around in the world. So it's very difficult to say anything about misinformation. So I would say I would never look at misinformation as a problem in isolation. I would look at it with in context, right? So we are struggling with so many things. I think, as someone put it the other day, the default going forward is going to be distrust. Okay, so you don't know whether the video you're watching is real. We don't know whether messaging you're getting is real. We don't know whether the advertising you're getting is real. We don't know anything. So our default becomes distrust, right? And so I think what will emerge in the few years ahead is we will increasingly see more and more markers of quality, right? Now, however much we may be cynical about what these markers of quality will do. Now, it could be like a Rotten Tomatoes rating for news, right? Like some people are trying to do. That's like literally their tagline. There'll be all these rating agencies, right, that talk about, hey, is this information reliable, trustworthy, that kind of thing. Or we might have other solutions. So in 2018, when I was at Stanford University, and there is a fellow, and the idea was to research disinformation. I found out through conversations that there were more than 500 technological solutions, or 500 initiatives, shall we say, not just technological, but mostly technological solutions aimed at the problem of disinformation. Now, these would be from, rating, Rotten Tomatoes for news onwards to creating plugins for our browsers that will rate everything we see to, you know, media literacy of a different variety, different types of media literacy. So honestly, I would say I would put my hope on the work that I'm doing. There is this saying that to a person with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And so for me, the hammer is media literacy. Okay, so it's or digital literacy. I would say really, I think the job is to figure out quickly how to educate people at the school level about the dangers of technology and the dangers of misinformation and unreliable information, and go from there. Because otherwise, if you look at it from the supply level problem, technology is moving way too fast. By the time we design some solution at the technological level, the technology might have changed. But what isn't changing so fast are us, our wiring, our psychology. And I think that's where the intervention should be, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. I mean, you are preaching to the choir. We are all about media literacy. Workshops is literally a love affair with social and media matters, and curriculum is something where we are getting into, trying to get into, because that's where we can see scale. And with curriculum, we are not going high tech; we are going low tech for India. That we are actually thinking textbooks and school, and how do we start it at the base level, because like you said, the tech will change, and with the coming in of AI, every time you read a paper, it has already become old by the time you finished reading it. Something new has happened in that little time period. So yeah, I think media literacy is definitely something that we are looking into. Even in fact, the whole idea of this interview is that some of the answers we will be using in building that out in raising awareness. So from theoretical solutions as a guru and as a mentor to social and media matters, and then even to your team, what would be your advice literally for how do we, what is the action that we should take, what we should get towards when you say media literacy? What can organizations like us do to actually scale and have a sustainable impact?
So if you're looking at media literacy specifically, the first thing we've got to do is find a sexier term than media literacy. Okay, it's kind of boring, and I mean, I don't find it boring. I really like it. Okay, but I figured out that most people find it boring. So the question I'm always asking myself is, how do you frame this problem of a media literacy issue as something? What is a nice way to, like, what's an exciting way to frame it? When you say fact checking, it sounds like, it's an army of, it's got this ring. Okay, but to be honest, I believe that media literacy eventually is going to, I mean, not eventually, even today, is way more effective than fact checking, right? Now, i I would say, the challenge would be, how do you kind of frame media literacy as something that is desirable, and that is something that everyone should invest in, and then convince people to put their money where, what's the famous saying, money where the mouth is. I don't know, I'm not getting it
Put
right, but
put your money where your mouth is. Yeah.
mouth is, yeah, okay. So that's the challenge, really. I think curriculum and all, no, you can localize it. Again, it is kind of stuff that is incrementally improving. You create a curriculum, you do a few workshops, you realize, okay, this part is not working, you change the curriculum a little bit. So you build a curriculum based on what's working, based on the latest information. But really, I would say the challenge is convincing people that this is a problem worth investing in. So I would say that's really where I mean, that's where Boom is probably looking, not from a fact checking perspective, because I don't handle the fact checking aspect, but from a media literacy aspect, absolutely yes.
Yeah, I mean, what we hear from the field, and I was literally ITM Gwalior about uh, 4 days back. And the teachers and the parents, as well as the students, and this is not political misinformation, right? I mean, we tend to go towards that more, but health, financial, uh, pyramid scheme, a lot of misinformation that impact people on a daily basis, right? And it comes in the same methodology. So the problem during COVID and post COVID is known to everybody because of whatever the internet usage went up and the scams shot up, especially the financial one. Uh, I think it's just the optimism that we Indians have in us that we will win the lottery one day. That will happen, or not just Indians, maybe other cultures as well. But India, I know well. I think that's the core issue behind it. And yeah, finding a sexier term. So that's why when we do our campaigns, they're called like "Keep it real," "Don't be a fool," "YOLO," stuff which kids can consume. In fact, currently, right now, it's active. We are doing a rap for cause competition. So we've reached out to rappers across Instagram and really asked them, and we put out some money there as well, that why don't you rap for it, create a video, and the one which is most popular wins the prize. But trying to involve these cooler communities, which by approach, and because I think it's also our frame is such, when you deal with policymakers, you do tend to get boring because that is what they expect you to do. So I think that is something that we are doing. All right. I hear that loud and clear. So Boom is looking into innovative methodologies of media literacy, because here's a time to plug it to all the young folks as well. We do share your website everywhere we go. But are there any programs where you think people should come and collaborate, or where you're looking for volunteers and stuff like that?
So we launched the Teen Fact Checking Network at Boom last year, 2023. We'll carry on the work this year as well. So we work with teens we train them to become fact checkers, and we teach them how to produce a fact check for video as well. Other than that, we're doing something called the Northeast Fact Network, Facts Network, NEFN. Um, Originally, we thought that this is good. This is a different approach. We're trying to build a community first in the Northeast, as opposed to creating any content, because we believe the community should belong to everyone. So Boom has got a little bit of funding to do this. So we believe that this is for everybody, right? So that's the Northeast Facts Network. Anyone interested in working with us on media literacy, they're more than welcome, because like you folks are ahead of us, right? You're keeping it real and all that. We are like keeping it very unreal, to be honest. Okay, so I'm like, not we. I don't want to talk for my colleagues. I'll just say I've been keeping it very unreal. So I'm trying to work out a different way of addressing media literacy and figuring out how to make it more attractive, but from a perspective that makes sense to Boom, right? From a identity perspective as well, what it makes sense for us. So that's really what I'm focusing on. And at Boom, we're doing multiple things. So if you want to take part, please reach out to me on any social, and yeah, we'll do the needful. We'll get in touch.
All right, superb. I think the Northeast Fact Checking Network is really a service to India, and thanks for leading that, because every time we do workshops there, we see the lack of communication between the Northeast and rest of India, or let's specifically say Delhi. So that information gap or bottleneck is a major one. So amazing, and we'll certainly spread it across our network over there. Who all want to join in could be something good. So yeah, I think those were all the thoughts and questions from my side.